Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we're taking a close look at T4. That hormone we always hear about when talking about the thyroid, but maybe don't always understand.
Yeah, it's one of those things you see on lab reports and think, okay, what does this actually mean for me?
Exactly. And that's what we're here to do, decode those T4 results and really get into what they tell us about our health.
Because T4 is a pretty big deal. It's like
Yeah.
it touches so many aspects of how our bodies function.
I think that's what always throws me off. Like, I know it's connected to the thyroid, but then I hear about metabolism and energy and even brain function.
Exactly. So maybe let's just start with the basics. What exactly is T4? Where does it come from?
Yeah, like break it down for us.
So T4 stands for thyroxine.
Hmm?
It's a hormone, and it's produced by your thyroid gland, which is this little butterfly-shaped gland in your neck.
Oh, right.
And it's made using iodine and an amino acid called tyrosine.
Okay, so two ingredients, iodine and tyrosine. Got it.
In this T4, it plays a crucial role in regulating your body's energy use and growth.
So it's like the fuel that keeps our bodies running.
It's more like, think of it as a control panel for the fuel.
Okay, I like that.
It influences how fast or slow your metabolism runs,
Right.
which in turn affects how quickly your body uses energy. But it's not just about energy. T4 is also critical for the development and function of other organs, especially the brain.
That's interesting because I have heard that thyroid issues can sometimes affect mood and cognitive function.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a strong link between thyroid hormones and brain health, like even mild hypothyroidism in early childhood.
And the brain is still developing.
Yeah, exactly. When the brain is rapidly developing, it can have a lasting impact on things like attention span and memory.
Wow, so it's really crucial early on.
Yeah, it plays a big role.
Okay, so we know the thyroid makes T4, but I've also heard about this thing called free T4. What's the difference?
Oh, good question. So T4 actually exists in two forms in your bloodstream. You've got free T4, which is the active form, the one that your body can actually use.
Okay, so it's ready to go.
Ready to work. And then you have T4 that's bound to proteins, which basically makes it inactive until it's released.
So it's kind of like having tools in a toolbox. Some are ready to use and others are still packed away.
Perfect analogy. The free T4 is ready to go, and the protein-bound T4 is like a reserve waiting to be activated when needed.
So when we get our blood work done and
Yep.
we see those T4 lab tests, what exactly are they measuring?
There are two main tests that you'll see. The free T4 test and the total T4 test.
Okay, so free T4, just the active stuff?
Yep, just measures the amount of that active T4 in your blood. And then the total T4 test measures both.
Both the free and the bound.
Exactly, both the free and the protein-bound T4.
So one's like a snapshot of the workforce and the other is a head count of the entire team, including the reserves.
Precisely. And by looking at both values, doctors can get a better understanding of how your thyroid is functioning overall.
Okay, that makes sense. Now here's where I always get a little lost. What do those numbers actually mean? What are we looking for? What's normal and what's not?
So like many things in medicine, it's not always black and white.
There's some gray area.
There's definitely some gray area. The typical ranges for free T4 are between 0.8 and 2.8 nanograms per deciliter.
Okay, so less than 1 to almost 3.
And for total T4, it's usually between 5 and 12 micrograms per deciliter.
Got it. But you said these are just typical ranges.
Yeah, they can vary slightly between labs, and what's considered normal can also depend on individual factors.
So it's not as simple as just Googling it.
Not always. It's important to talk to your doctor to understand what those results actually mean for you specifically.
Because there's more to the story than just the numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are a lot of nuances to consider, which is why a proper diagnosis involves looking at the whole picture, your medical history, your symptoms, and any other lab tests that might be relevant.
So it's like one piece of a bigger puzzle.
Exactly. Like in those crime shows where they say the evidence never lies, but it can be misleading.
I love those shows.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. The evidence in this case is our T4 levels, and they can definitely provide clues, but we need to know how to interpret them correctly.
All right, so we've talked about what T4 is and how it's measured, but let's get into the really interesting stuff interpreting those results. What can high or low T4 levels tell us about what's going on in the body?
That's the million-dollar question, right? So let's say someone has elevated T4 levels. This could signal a few different things, like it could be hyperthyroidism, where the thyroid is just overproducing hormones.
Okay, so it's working overtime.
Exactly. It could also be due to thyroiditis, which is an inflammation of the thyroid, or Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disorder.
So high T4 could be caused by a few different things.
It can. And each of those conditions requires a different approach to treatment. So it's important to figure out what the underlying cause is.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Nope. What about low T4? What do you think that might suggest?
Well, if high T4 means the thyroid is overactive, I'm guessing low T4 means it's underactive.
You got it. Low T4 often indicates hypothyroidism where the thyroid isn't producing enough hormones.
Okay.
It could also be a sign of pituitary gland disorders, which can affect thyroid hormone production, or Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is another autoimmune condition that damages the thyroid.
So both high and low T4 can have serious implications for our health.
They can. It's not something to take lightly.
Are there other things that can affect our T4 levels even if our thyroid is functioning normally?
You know, there are certain medications can alter T4 levels, like lithium or amiodarone.
I've heard of those.
And pregnancy can cause fluctuations, as can chronic illnesses, and even how much iodine you're getting in your diet.
So our bodies are complex.
Incredibly complex, but knowing about these factors can help us have more informed conversations with our doctors.
Right, because sometimes we just see the numbers and we don't know what to make of them.
Exactly. The more we understand about how these hormones work, the better we can advocate for our health and make informed decisions about our care.
That's a great point. So we've covered what T4 is, how it's measured, and some general things that can cause those numbers to fluctuate.
We've laid a good foundation.
We have. Now let's get even deeper into the nitty-gritty of interpreting those lab results and what they actually mean for our health.
All right, let's do it.
Now, you mentioned other lab tests earlier, and I know we often hear about T4 being tested alongside something called TSH.
Yeah, TSH.
What exactly is that, and how does it fit into this whole thyroid puzzle?
So TSH stands for thyroid-stimulating hormone, and it's actually produced by the pituitary gland, which is like the command center for a lot of our hormones.
Okay.
And you can think of TSH like a messenger that tells the thyroid gland how much T4 to produce.
So it's like the boss giving orders to the thyroid.
It's more like a feedback loop.
Okay.
So when T4 levels are low, the pituitary gland releases more TSH to tell the thyroid, hey, we need to step up production.
Okay.
And then when T4 levels are sufficient, TSH production decreases.
So it's like a thermostat, right?
Yeah.
Try to keep everything balanced.
Perfect analogy. And this delicate balance between TSH and T4 is really crucial for maintaining a healthy metabolism, energy levels, and just overall well-being.
So doctors look at both T4 and TSH to really get the full picture of thyroid function.
Precisely. If we only looked at T4, we might miss some important clues.
Like what? What kind of clues would we miss?
So, for example, someone could have low T4 but high TSH,
Okay.
which would indicate that the thyroid isn't responding properly to the pituitary gland's signals.
So it's like sending a text but not getting a reply. Something's blocking the communication.
Exactly. And that's where the detective work comes in. By looking at both values, doctors can pinpoint the source of the problem and then tailor the treatment accordingly.
So we need both pieces of the puzzle.
We do.
It's fascinating how these hormones work together. It makes me wonder, are there things we can do in our everyday lives to support healthy thyroid function?
You know there are. While some factors like autoimmune conditions are beyond our control, there are definitely things we can do to give our thyroid a helping hand.
Okay, let's hear it. What are the secrets to a happy thyroid?
Well, one really important factor is making sure you're getting enough iodine,
Iodine.
because iodine is a crucial building block for thyroid hormones.
Okay.
So a deficiency can lead to hypothyroidism.
So we need to make sure we're getting enough, but not too much, right?
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Right, because we talked earlier about how excess iodine can also be a problem.
Exactly. Most people can get enough iodine from a balanced diet that includes things like seafood, dairy products, iodized salt.
Okay, good to know.
But it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor if you have concerns about your iodine intake.
Makes sense. So besides iodine, what else can we do to keep our thyroids happy and healthy?
Managing stress is huge
Stressed, okay.
because chronic stress can really negatively impact the entire endocrine system, including the thyroid gland.
So taking time for relaxation and self-care isn't just a luxury. It's actually an investment in our thyroid health.
It really is. Finding healthy ways to manage stress, whether it's through exercise mindfulness or just spending time in nature, can make a big difference.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. It seems like a lot of the things that are good for our overall health are also good for our thyroid.
You're absolutely right. Taking care of our physical and mental well-being is essential for supporting healthy thyroid function.
So it's like a holistic approach.
Exactly.
So alongside iodine and stress management, are there any other lifestyle factors we should be mindful of?
Yeah, getting enough sleep is crucial.
Sleep. Okay.
When we're sleep deprived, Our bodies produce more stress hormones, which can interfere with thyroid hormone
So
production.
those 7 to 8 hours aren't just about feeling rested. They're actually supporting our thyroid health.
Exactly. And it's worth noting that these lifestyle changes aren't quick fixes.
Right.
It's about making sustainable, long-term adjustments to support our bodies.
So it's like tending to a garden. We need to nurture it consistently to help it thrive.
I love that analogy. It's about creating the right conditions for our bodies to flourish.
Speaking of flourishing, are there any red flags we should be watching out for that might signal our thyroid needs a checkup?
That's a great question. And while we've talked a lot about the technical aspects of T4, it's equally important to listen to our bodies and recognize the signs they might be sending us.
So what should we be on the lookout for? What might our bodies be trying to tell us?
One common sign of hypothyroidism is persistent fatigue. Even if you're getting enough sleep, if you're constantly feeling drained and low on energy, it's worth bringing that up with your doctor.
So don't just brush it off as being busy.
Exactly. Another red flag is unexplained weight gain or difficulty losing weight despite diet and exercise.
Makes sense. Since T4 plays a role in metabolism, changes in weight could be a clue.
Exactly. And then changes in mood can also be a sign of thyroid imbalance.
Right.
Like hypothyroidism, for example, is often associated with depression, while hyperthyroidism can manifest as anxiety or irritability.
Interesting. So if we're noticing some big shifts in our emotional landscape, it's worth considering whether our thyroid might be involved.
Absolutely. And don't hesitate to raise these concerns with your doctor. They can help determine if further testing is needed.
So it's all about connecting the dots between what we're feeling and what might be happening hormonally.
Precisely.
Are there any other red flags we should be aware of?
Changes in your hair and skin can also be subtle, but significant indicators of thyroid health.
Yeah.
Hypothyroidism can lead to dry, brittle hair and nails, as well as dry, itchy skin.
So if we're noticing changes in how our hair, skin, and nails look and feel, it could be our thyroid sending us a message.
It could be. And this is where self-awareness is so important. The more attuned we are to our bodies and our baseline, the more likely we are to notice when something feels off.
And then we can advocate for ourselves and seek professional guidance.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
all about empowering ourselves with knowledge and partnering with our healthcare providers to navigate these complexities.
Speaking of complexities, we often hear about thyroid disorders being more common in women. Is there any truth to that?
There is definitely a pattern there. While thyroid disorders can affect anyone, they are more prevalent in women, especially during times of hormonal fluctuation like pregnancy and menopause.
So those hormonal shifts can sometimes throw the thyroid off balance.
Yeah, you could say that. And that's why it's so crucial for women to be aware of the signs and symptoms and to advocate for regular thyroid screenings as part of their routine health care.
Early detection is key.
It is.
Now that we've laid the groundwork for understanding T4, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some real-world examples. Can you walk us through some case scenarios to illustrate how T4 levels might present in different situations?
Absolutely. Let's put this knowledge into practice and see how it plays out in real life.
So let's say we're sitting down with our doctor and they're going over our lab results. What would it mean if we had high free T4 but low TSH? What could be going on there?
So that's a pretty classic presentation of hyperthyroidism.
Okay.
Remember, TSH is that signal from the pituitary gland telling the thyroid how much T4 to make. So low TSH means the pituitary is trying to hit the brakes. Okay.
It's like, whoa, thyroid, slow down.
Okay.
But if free T4 is still high, it means the thyroid isn't listening. It's overproducing hormones on its own.
So it's like our thyroid is a car speeding down the highway even though we're slamming on the brakes.
Yeah, exactly. And this often points to an issue with the thyroid gland itself, like Graves' disease or a thyroid nodule that's producing extra hormones independently.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what about the opposite? Low free T4 and high TSH, what would that tell us?
So this is a common pattern in hypothyroidism. And in this case, the pituitary gland is sending out an SOS saying, we need more T4.
More power.
Yeah, more power. But if free T4 is still low, it means the thyroid just can't keep up with the demand.
So the pituitary is like a coach yelling, give me more power, but the thyroid is just tapped out.
Exactly. And this could be due to a problem with the thyroid itself, like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or if the thyroid has been surgically removed, it could also mean the pituitary gland isn't producing TSH effectively.
So it's like a puzzle trying to figure out which part of the system isn't working as it should. It is a bit of a puzzle sometimes.
Now, I'm guessing there are cases that are even more complex than that.
Yeah.
Like, what if someone has a normal free T4, but an abnormal TSH?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this can actually be a sign of what we call subclinical thyroid disorders.
So clinical.
Think of it like a volcano that's rumbling but hasn't erupted yet.
Okay.
It means the early stages of either hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism are brewing, but the free T4 hasn't been significantly affected yet.
So it's like a warning sign that something might be up and we need to keep an eye on it.
Exactly. In these cases, doctors might want to do further investigation to see if treatment is needed or if it's best to just monitor things over time.
So it's not always clear cut.
Not always. The endocrine system is incredibly complex and there can be a lot of individual variations.
So we need to listen to our bodies.
Absolutely.
This has been super informative, but I think it's important to remember that this is just a general overview, and it's not a substitute for expert medical advice.
Yeah, definitely not. This is just a starting point for having informed conversations with your doctor, not a way to self-diagnose.
Right, because every case is unique.
Exactly.
Speaking of the human side of things, what would you say to someone who's been newly diagnosed with a thyroid condition or is struggling to manage their thyroid health?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the most important thing to remember is you're not alone.
You're not alone.
Thyroid disorders are so common, and there's a whole community of people out there who understand what you're going through.
That's so true.
Don't be afraid to connect with others for support, whether it's friends, family, or online support groups.
Yeah, sharing experiences and knowing you're not alone can make such a difference.
Definitely. And also be patient with yourself. Finding the right treatment plan and adjusting to medication if you need it can take time. It's a process,
Oh.
and it's okay to have ups and downs along the way.
That's a great reminder. It's not a race.
It's not. And my last piece of advice would be just listen to your body.
Listen to your body.
Pay attention to those subtle changes in your energy, your mood, or any physical symptoms. You know yourself best, and those clues are valuable information to share with your doctor.
I love that advice. It's about being an active participant in our own health journey.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of T4. I feel like we've learned so much.
Me too. It's been fun.
And I hope our listeners feel empowered to take charge of their thyroid health. So until next time, everyone stay curious and keep those brains buzzing.
You've been listening to the Learning Podcast, a production of metaNESTA. Remember, learning is a journey. One step, one insight, one skill at a time. We'll see you next time. Keep learning, stay curious, and as always, be awesome.